So welcome everyone. My name is Laura Poskin. I'm the Executive Director of Age Friendly Greater Pittsburgh, and we are here today to talk about age-inclusive workplaces. But first, like I said, I'm going to give you a little reintroduction to who we are at Age Friendly. The Age Friendly movement is about making our region more inclusive and respectful of every generation. We're talking about the built environment. We're talking about the social environment. We're talking about a sidewalk. If it's better for an 86-year-old neighbor who might be using a walker, for example, it's going to be better for my 5-year-old who is looking all around anywhere but the sidewalk. It's going to be better for me, a 41-year-old mom who is trying to wrangle that 5-year-old. It's going to be better for all of us when we create environments that are good for older adults. They're good for everybody. And our mission is to bring generations together to reimagine how our neighborhoods are built. Guess what? They weren't built for us to live well into our 80s, 90s, 100s. And to advance equity through advocacy, education, and innovation. One piece of innovation that we've done over the years is called Coffee Connect. So it's creating these spaces where people of all ages can interact. We started off with these Coffee Connect sessions at coffee shops. Kim, you said you were drinking coffee, so this is very appropriate. We know that people oftentimes are on their devices in coffee shops now. We know that third spaces can be a chance for people to meet their neighbors. And so we did this kind of fun demonstration where you have to choose whether you are open to conversation. There's like a little placard, you're open to conversation, you're not open, maybe another time is the other choice. But just this idea that you have the possibility of coming together with a neighbor of a different age. And we're actually celebrating our 100th Coffee Connect. We transitioned to online. We're celebrating our 100th Coffee Connect in a few weeks. So if you're interested, let us know in the chat and we'll make sure that you're invited. The domains of livability. So we didn't come up with the concept of age friendly. Age Friendly was started by the World Health Organization about 20 years ago, and this is the framework for what we mean by age friendly. So like I said, it's the built environment, it's the social environment, thinking about ways to make them better for our older neighbors, and in turn, that's going to be better for everyone. So built environment pieces like transportation, housing, social environment, really opportunities across our lifetime. You'll see at the bottom right, there's civic participation and employment, which is really, what we're here to talk about today. And this network, we joined in 2015, right before I moved here and started working on the project. And when we joined, there were just kind of a handful of communities who were doing it. Cassandra and I, when we compile these slides, every time we have to look and see what the updated number is. And Cassandra and I think both were updating this number yesterday. 875 communities are part of it. Age Friendly Greater Pittsburgh is Allegheny County and the city of Pittsburgh. And we are an initiative of Southwestern Pennsylvania Partnership for Aging, or SWPA, and University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. Again, I really want to get to Dr. Gordon, who's joining us today. But I do want to just center us in some facts about, why do we care about this? And essentially, it's because our region, like the rest of the United States, is growing older. Every day, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. Stacey, I think that you've updated that number for us, and it's actually 15,000. But every day, people are turning older. By 2030, we are going to be what's called a super age society, with more than 20% of our population in that 65 and older category. And Allegheny County, hopefully most of the folks on this call already know this, but we're actually the second oldest area of the country, second to Palm Beach, Florida, which it's just a different situation there. In Allegheny County, we've had people who have been living in their homes for decades, for generations. And it's just a very different situation than the folks in Palm Beach, Florida. So we're the second oldest area of the country, already kind of in that super aged society category. Excuse me. And we know that 8 in 10 Americans want to age in place. That doesn't necessarily mean sitting in their living room. It could, but we know that aging in place is really about being able to age in your community and having opportunities available to you your whole life. And related to that, we know that there are a lot of disparities, again, across the country, and especially here in the Pittsburgh region. We always point out that there is just this difference in life expectancy. And it's indicative of a lot of disparities that we have here. So white women in our region can expect to live to 78. Black men can expect to live to 64. It's a difference of more than a decade. And that's, having opportunities again across your lifetime. And what does that mean for people of all ages? So these are the kind of stats that are on our mind as we come up with our action plans. So we submit action plans to the World Health Organization and AARP that runs the network in the United States. Because we are 8+ years into this work, we've created 2 action plans. So our most current action plan, or I should say our current action plan, is here on the right. And we set goals alongside of our partners. We have a network of 120 partners. We talked to people across our region and really listened and came up with what our goals were in this period of being part of the network. And one of our goals is to counter ageism, and particularly ageism in the workplace, which is what we're here to talk about today. All right, how am I doing on time? Okay, I'm doing all right. So ageism, to level set, again, to reintroduce an idea or to introduce an idea, really refers to how we think, feel, and act towards others and towards ourselves based on age. I think the ourselves part is something that is a little bit new to me that I've been thinking about more and more. And why does it matter? I think a lot of us, especially if you made your way to a lunch and learn about age inclusive workplaces, you kind of get why it matters. But again, I'll share some centering information. So age stereotypes internalized as early as age 3, perpetuated across your lifetime. I have the "it's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring" song on the right, because there are just these things in our culture that we kind of we don't notice until we do notice, right? And these negative age beliefs, it's not just something that maybe makes you feel bad, but it actually, research out of Yale University by Dr. Becca Levy has shown that this takes more than 7 years off of our life if we're thinking about this and people are kind of imposing this idea on us. It really takes a toll on our health. We know in our region, older adults are the fastest growing segment of our workforce. We also know we have a smaller pool of candidates. How many of us are trying to find good people to be part of our teams? We know that older adults are raising their hand to work longer than ever. And so, that's just something that we have to think about related to ageism. Only about 8% of companies include age in their DEI statements. And we know that teams with older people, these age diverse teams, have been found to be more effective than teams that are not age diverse. And so ageism happens in different ways. Like I said, it can be, within ourselves. We think, oh, we maybe shouldn't wear that because, I'm 41, I shouldn't wear that outfit. It could be between people. It could be in our organizations, in our systems. It could be, when you go to the doctor's office with your mom or your grandmother or your grandfather or a neighbor, and they happen to talk to you instead of talking to your 86-year-old neighbor that you're going with. That's ageism in action. And so today we're here to talk about ageism, in our organizations / workplaces. So I mentioned that we did this survey. Maybe some of you who are here today took this survey. Just last month, we decided to survey that network of 120 partners and see, how does age show up or not show up where folks work. And a quote that someone shared as they, or a comment someone shared, is that the survey gave them some good things to think about, and that they're thinking about age inclusiveness in the people that they serve, but not necessarily within their staff. So we thought that was interesting. We had a total of 49 responses, which was great. The majority of folks were from the nonprofit sector, which is not too surprising considering our network of partners. And really, folks who chose to take the survey, their organizations were really thinking about age and aging. And 94% said that their organization is committed to creating an age-inclusive workplace. That's better than we thought. 83% feel informed about age-friendly topics, which also is good. They are within our network of partners. Interestingly, only about half said that they include age as part of their DEI statement. A little less than half include ageism in their DEI initiatives. 65% said that they're successful in recruiting older employees. So, a little less about recruiting folks to work at their organization. And, most folks said that they're really successful in retaining their older employees. And then people really did recognize the value of an age range in staff. It adds so much to the perspective and experience the agency can call upon when confronting new challenges and then attempting to improve existing systems and routines. All right. Well, I zoomed right through that. Okay. So this, I want to underscore, these are preliminary findings. We just surveyed our network of organizations. Pitt School of Social Work is our research partner, and they're going to be helping us kind of learn more from the data that we collected. And we did want to share some of these preliminary findings with you. We think it's really interesting. We're hopeful that even more people are thinking really meaningfully about, how does age show up in the workplace, and how can we be more age inclusive? We are so happy to have with us Dr. Stacey Gordon, and we have her photo here, but I'll just read a quick bio before we get started with Dr. Gordon. So she is the program director of Next Phase Adult Caregiving and Retirement for the Work-Life Office at NYU. In her role, Stacey relies on her expertise in social work and gerontology to provide university-wide programming, thought leadership, and personalized consultations with faculty and administrators on adult caregiving, aging, and retirement planning. Stacey earned her doctorate in social welfare at the NYU Silver School of Social Work, where she focused on structural ageism and the family. Stacey holds an MSW degree from University of Michigan and a BA in economics from the University of Maryland. Stacey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. It was wonderful to hear about your program and all that you're doing in Pittsburgh.
Thanks. And I should have said, we have a really active age-friendly workforce work group that has been thinking about this for several years, really informed, the work that we did, the survey that we offered. And so grateful to them. Lisa was part of that work group. Sean has been part of that work group. Thank you all so much. And let's dive into some questions that we came up with. I really hope, and I think we're good on timing, that we can go through some questions with you, Dr. Gordon, and then we can open it up to the folks that are here with us today. So, so age inclusive workplaces encountering ageism is something that, like I said, many people have thought about for a long time. There's some research out there, but somehow it feels like it's a new topic. And I'm curious why that is. Like, why now? Why not sooner? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I also sort of feel like there's been a boom in, in literature about ageism, and just not only literature, because I'll go back to that in a sec, but actually ageism sort of in popular culture. I don't know how many of you follow Ashton Applewhite. Yeah. Right. So Ashton wrote her book, This Chair Rocks, a Manifesto Against Ageism, in, I think, 2015 or 16. And that really has taken off. So she's really created much more of a real movement. She has this cadre of people around her, who, number one, started Old School. Thank you, Cassandra. Number one, started Old School, which is a really wonderful resource on ageism tools and literature. But even before that, so I was teaching at the University of Chicago in the School of Social Work there. And read all sorts of, literature on ageism. So Robert Butler, who was really sort of the grandfather of the field, wrote his article on ageism, and in 1969, and it was the first article published about ageism, and it was published in the journal Gerontologist. And in that article, he compared ageism to racism and sexism, and sort of brought it out into the sort of public square, as an issue that we really need to address. And since then, the research around ageism has really developed, and actually the area of ageism that I think is most well developed is ageism in the workplace.
Great. And it's so interesting that it's also coming at this time where people are, or organizations are really trying to find more workers, right? Seemingly, it's just kind of an interesting intersection there.
Yeah, as you said, the number is actually went from 10 to 12,000 people are turning 65 every day. So it makes sense that now, as we have this, the baby boomers really, sort of moving up in age and needing more and more services, wanting to work more, needing to work more in many cases because they haven't been able to save enough for retirement, and have now realized that their Social Security is not, is not going to afford them the same kind of lifestyle that they've had in their working lives. So yes, more and more people want to work, and more people need to work longer.
Absolutely. It's so important to talk about the want and or need, to work. And so before we get into what you do exactly at NYU, and I really can't wait for all those concrete examples for everybody, what do you see as the value of a multi-generational workforce, or of an age diverse team?
Right. That's actually one of my favorite topics. I work in a multi-generational team. We have people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s here at WorkLife. And every person is unique, but every sort of generation has their sort of has their interesting cultural habits, music, dress, where their sort of relation to food, because food's a really big thing in our workplace. And, I find that we are, together, when we are thinking together and planning together, we are incredibly creative, innovative. We're able to really think outside of the generational boxes,
Yeah.
and we're able to accomplish a lot in this, small but mighty space of work life at NYU.
I love that. And that makes sense being on a college campus that you would
Yes.
have that
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
And I love that experience on our team as well. It's so invaluable. So very broadly, tell us about the Work Life Office at New York University and what you do as the director of Next Phase Adult Caregiving and Retirement.
Sure. So work life at NYU, first of all, work life as a field is, it's an outgrowth of HR, and it's not HR. So we actually operate separately, completely separately from HR. On many different campuses, work life is part of HR, but we were started by the provost, the former provost now of NYU, who actually had lived abroad and realized that she was actually in Paris, that in Paris, the childcare was, sort of comprehensive, and the university that she worked in provided, sort of all sorts of services to elevate families and to really make it sort of easier for families to maneuver, to take care of their loved ones, both younger and older loved ones. And when she came back to NYU after her sabbatical, she became provost and decided to create our Work Life Office. So it started with a program on parenting and K through 12 education and childcare. So in that area, so there's another program director who's running those programs, but there are support programs for parents and with young children, and actually helping people navigate the crazy school systems in New York City and the suburban areas. But my area was sort of a twinkle in our executive director's eye for a while. I was the second of the program directors to come on, and the focus was on adult caregiving, initially only on adult caregiving and retirement. And when I was hired, I said, I am coming on with this, great interest and experience in aging and ageism. So I had been a care manager, a social work care manager for almost 20 years before starting this sort of next phase of my career. And I knew I had seen number one, the literature on ageism, and I had sort of seen ageism in the family in my own work over the course of almost 20 years, and realized that there was something else that needed to happen. At the same time I started this job, right before I started this job, I was just completing my doctoral work on ageism in the family and sort of brought that in with me. So I created a program where we have everything that we do is sort of through an anti-ageist lens. So for example, all of my work stems from one-on-one interactions, consultations with faculty and administrators. So it's from those consultations that I get sort of a body of information about the needs, about sort of the care situations that people are dealing with, about their struggles in integrating work and their caregiving duties. So I created a bunch of different programs to support caregivers, and then moved into sort of the next part of my work, which is the retirement programming. So I help people through one-on-one consultations, think about when they want to retire, what they want to do when they want to retire. But I saw again it through the consultations that it wasn't enough to just have a consultation, that we really needed sort of bring people together to talk. You know, at many universities, everyone is sort of in their own silo. It's very, you know, oftentimes I'll bring people together, two people, let's say, both of them have been working at NYU for 35 or 40 years and they've never met. They've worked, you know, literally in the same building on a different floor, and they just have never met, which is like mind-boggling to me. But there are a lot of people here, and people are siloed. So what I do is I bring people together for several different types of workshops. One is called Envisioning Retirement. Actually, I created a toolkit to go with that, that workshop, which is right here, the Envisioning Retirement Toolkit. And that's sort of, you know, an hour and a half to 2 hour long workshop. But then that was also not enough. People were coming back for more. So I decided to create something called the TARTS, which is an acronym for talking about retirement transitions seriously. The TARTS is an ongoing year-long workshop. People meet once a month and really think about the larger issues, which are, you know, sort of what is retirement really about? It's really a sort of an identity crisis for most people, where they're moving from, you know, from this, you know, very, very strong identity as an academic or as an administrator into the unknown. So the questions are, you know, how do they manage that identity crisis? How do they find relevance in, you know, in life after, when, you know, when you've been a really important person, you know, as academics all are, as we all are, you know, and then you leave that place where your importance sort of is situated. It's really complicated. So in the TARTS, I deal with a lot of issues around, you know, sort of moving from one place to the next, keeping your sense of self intact.
Yeah, and when we've talked before, you talked about how people don't really see retirement as part of your career trajectory or something, that it's just kind of like you're done.
Right.
And then you're left to your own device. And the work that you do, it's not the financial pieces of retirement, which is oftentimes the only thing that's.
Yeah, right. Oftentimes, right, someone will go to a financial advisor and talk about money. And that's really important, because that will support, you know, whatever it is that you're planning or thinking about doing. But, you know, what I ask people in these workshops is, you know, what do you think you're going to do when you wake up the day that you're retired? And what are you thinking about that first month and the first, you know, half a year, the first year? And I really sort of help them plan out this, you know, sort of short-term to longer-term trajectory, that a plan that helps people go from, you know, sort of from where they are and there, and the conversation is always about their values and about how they're going to use their values ongoing, how their values will inform their decisions, how to find purpose and meaning in the work that they're moving into. And oftentimes people actually will, you know, realize that, oh, now is the time that I can do this, you know, that I can create, let's say, a business out of this really fun, interesting hobby that I've really never had a chance to, you know, to delve into in a serious way. And by the way, one of the best statistics that I've learned about entrepreneurialism in, you know, sort of in retirement, is that people who are entrepreneurs and start businesses over 50 are way more successful than those who start businesses in their 20s and 30s and 40s, which is, you know, a pretty nice thing to look forward to if you've always had sort of something that, you know, is in your back pocket that you want to really, you know, delve into in retirement.
So interesting. So interesting. And just kind of that just shows, you know, we always talk about like older adults being such an asset to our community. And older adults have diverse skills, interests, not necessarily like we try to combat the like old is wise, but older, they have the experience and they really have the know-how and the creativity and all the things that you've been talking about. So like just thinking about what the next chapter is, it's not like their work at NYU is over. So then, but it's what's next really. It's interesting that NYU is valuing and really investing, I mean, through the work that you do, investing in their employees as lifelong members of the NYU community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have these three areas: adult caregiving, aging, and retirement, but then I also developed the Society of Retired Faculty. And that's an organization with over 1,000 members. But I do sort of honestly, when I say all like these four different buckets, I think, oh, this is why I don't sleep. But I love each one of these areas. I really do. So the Society of Retired Faculty is a group that is moving into a new phase. In other words, we started in 2021 during the pandemic, and we had been thinking about this and, really we were concerned about our retired faculty during the pandemic and decided that it was, now was the right time, or it was the right time to offer some programming connections to, to other people in the community or around, wherever anyone was, sort of residing or podding or sheltering or whatever you want to call it. And so we started the society. We now have weekly yoga classes, poetry classes. We have society members giving lectures. Next semester, we have a lecture on the development of the department stores and focusing on B. Altman, the man and the store. I don't know if any of you know B. Altman, but it was a large department store that's now defunct, but it was like one of the first big department stores in New York. We also have someone talking about a photography exhibit. We have someone presenting about creativity in the third age. So members, our newest phase is that members are now starting to sort of deliver interesting workshops about the topics that they are not working in, but just sort of are hobbies for them.
Is it tied to Osher at all or no? Do you have the
not
Osher lifelong learning?
No,
Okay.
actually, NYU did have Osher a long time ago. NYU also has something called the Academy of Lifelong Learning through the School of Professional Studies. But we are not, at this point, we're not connected to them, although we do sort of refer back and forth. So our members do take their classes.
Interesting. Cool. Well, I have a few more questions, then we'll open it up. But curious, so when we did our survey, we asked folks at the end what topics they were most interested in for their own organizations. You've definitely touched on this so far, but employee health and wellness was number one. You talked about the one-on-one consultations that you do. Is there anything else you would add to the employee health and wellness pieces that you offer at NYU?
Yes. So as I said, the consultations really inform the rest of my work. So one of the pieces that I found and continue to find in my consultations is that people are really stressed about adult caregiving. So, managing adult caregivers or managing their adult caregiving duties in the workplace, having to make telephone calls during the day, take time off to take to accompany a parent to a medical appointment is very stressful, and people lose work time and they lose focus, and it's really complicated. So what I just had to do was actually create number one, a bunch of different support groups for adult caregivers. So we now have a weekly support group that has been meeting online since COVID. We have an in-person monthly support group that, meets, and has, great New York bagels and coffee once a month at like from 8:30 to 10 a.m. so that people can actually go usually before they start the workday or just be an hour late rather than an hour and a half late. And so, and that's a very, very helpful centering space for people. We also just started a caregiver group for people who are caring for older loved ones who are outside of the country. So we call it the International Caregivers Group. Because we found that they really have different needs. They need their needs are, getting to their older loved ones. How do they get to them when, at the drop of a hat? How do they navigate, doctors like speaking to their parents' doctor if they need, when the time difference is so huge. Sometimes they don't speak the language of the country where their parents are living, all sorts of complicated issues. So we're starting that as well. Another thing that we are doing is we created a solo aging network. So we're meeting once a month with people who are basically, growing older alone or don't really have someone that they feel like they can rely on in an emergency. So we're actually sort of seeding this new group where, we're having them come to our office now once a month. And then in the fall, we'll be partnering with a community organization called Road, where they're bringing in Aging Alone Together, which is a program that they have newly refurnished. They're really building it out, and so they'll be coming in to do a weekly workshop with this group. They're talking about finding let's say filling out advanced directives, finding healthcare processes, living wills. And the questions are really, who do they find to, who do they designate as their healthcare proxy? Who is going to be their power of attorney if they're alone? And so what we're doing by creating this group is really destigmatizing, aging alone. It's okay. There are a lot of people who are aging alone in New York City and all over the country, we know. And so we're really destigmatizing that group and the situation that people are finding themselves in and helping them to feel like, there are ways to meet their needs and helping people plan to meet their needs.
I love that. I think the working caregiver piece essential.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it for a while. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I understand some of the possible supports. The solo aging, kind of the opposite of that, like not having that network is so essential. I think that's so interesting that you're doing that work. The next, so people were interested in employee health and wellness. They were also interested in workplace environment and culture. And I know some examples of some things that you're doing. Can you share that with the rest of the people on the Zoom today?
Yeah, so another big piece of sort of the culture of support that work life provides is something called caregiving conversations. So we again bring people together based on the issues that we're hearing about and bring in speakers usually from NYU, oftentimes through the medical school or the nursing school, on topics that will help people create that sort of balance and integration, right? Help people to sort of feel like they can take something on, they can handle what's going on. And so that's another piece of the, sort of helping to provide greater information that will then create, balance and, employee wellness. Another big piece of the work of my office is around caring culture. So when the new president of NYU stepped in to her office, in September of 2023, she had a lot to deal with since then. She and the provost and HR sort of don't basically put some money in a pot for our work life office colleagues to create what we call a caring culture program. So they each the caring culture grants are $5,000 grants that are given to different groups that apply for them throughout the university. And they can be for anything from, lunches so that different departments can get together and feel like, they're supported and they have like some food that the caring culture grant provides, or it could be, a buddy program within a department or a school where, people are being connected, they're, given some support to go out to lunch or to meet, or so these grants, there were 10 of them given out this past year, and so far there's been like a huge response from the NYU community. People really want to connect, and they want to connect around feeling good. And so that's a lot of what the Work Life Office facilitates.
That's amazing. And I'm just going to ask right now about one more thing, is that I know you've done some photography projects that kind of get the word out in a more real public way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So just to back up a teeny bit, before I started at NYU, I had created something called the Wrinkle Project, which you can look up online, wrinkleproject.org. And the Wrinkle Project has a 4-pronged approach to helping people change the way that they see growing older. One of the Wrinkle Project foci was this wrinkle salon, which is designed to get people to think about their own internalized ageism. That 4th type of ageism that you commented on, Laura, the implicit ageism, the ageism that sort of crops up when we, sort of go out and look at our, see if we have gray hair or dye our hair or feel uncomfortable wearing something because of our age. That sort of doubt, our own self-doubt, that's the implicit ageism. So the Wrinkle Salon is about addressing implicit ageism and then structural ageism. We also do something called a Death Cafe, which is not my idea, but it's an international program to think about how the way that we die really informs the way we live. And another part is the public service announcements about ageism. So what I did was I took that and brought it to NYU. At first, I started with a program called Images of Future Selves, which was designed to bring groups of students, undergraduate students, together with retired faculty. They went out with their own cameras, took pictures of each other, doing things that they like to do, and then talked about how those photographs sort of help them see older people or younger people in a different light. So that was the Images of Future Selves. The next iteration of that is something that's coming up that I want to invite all of you to, which is perhaps the most exciting thing that I have ever worked on in my life. So NYU has this public art space called the Kimmel Windows. Kimmel Windows are 70 by 80-inch huge windows on the side of one of the main buildings across from the library. There are 13 of them, and we have created and are curating an exhibit on ageism. So we have 13 windows, 12 different topics, and then a call to action at the end that we are focusing on. We've partnered with graphic artist who is designing these amazing drawings, cartoons, basically about the different themes of ageism. So it's going to be really interesting and fun. There are we're opening, the opening will be mid-September, and we'll be, helping groups come and, sort of creating a guide and so on. So.
And what's that project called again? So we
It's
have
called
it.
What About Age?
What about age? Love it.
Yeah.
So we have about 10 more minutes left. I have some more questions, but I
Sure.
wondered if there are some burning questions from the rest of the folks on the call. I'm just going to open it up for a second. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute. Oh, William Hope. William.
Hi there. Thank you so much. And this is a wonderful presentation. So, Dr. Gordon, I'm going to just go directly to you on this one. This is more of a personal matter there. This has definitely been a topic with my mother, actually, because she's set to retire at the end of the year, and she has this idea that, okay, I'm going to be retired, and she doesn't have any real plan other than the typical, oh, I'm going to travel, spend some time with friends, my grandkid. And I'm like, yeah, but that'll last about 6 months. Then what are you going to do for the next 20 years? What would be your suggestion as somebody who would need to have that conversation? Would it be beneficial for them just to maybe attend one of these coffee sessions or these networking things? Would that be the best route?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, Laura and I can talk about doing some sort of, program together. I'm not sure exactly what you're doing now around retirement, but, generally, William, what I tell people is that, retirement and beyond is the longest period of time for which most people have no plan, right? So if you think about retirement as any other part of life, then you have to sort of realize that getting up in the morning is going to mean just getting up in the morning. And if you don't have any set plan, then you're sort of going to fall back down. So getting your mom to think about, sort of the opportunities of finding something to do and framing it. I think a lot of times people they do a little bit of fear mongering, like you're gonna get sick and die, and if you don't have a plan, don't do that. But we do know, honestly, that particularly with men, if they don't have something to do, there's a higher rate of depression for men in retirement than for women. I would structure a conversation as an opportunity for your mother to really think about, what there is out there, help her open her eyes to things that, might really interest her. But also the most important thing to know about why it's good to plan in retirement is because it will help her stay independent. And independence is the most important thing to everyone, right? All the time. Maybe it's interdependence or intradependence at some point, but independence, being able to move on your own, to live on your own, to do what you want to do, and to structure your time. That's really the rationale, right? To stay independent, to plan is the best way to stay independent. And, so I would ask her, is she interested in volunteering? There are all sorts of amazing volunteer opportunities. AmeriCorps senior program actually engages older people in volunteering. And there was also, there used to be Encore Now it's called Co-Generate, but they have all sorts of interesting programs. But I would, ask Laura what sorts of volunteer opportunities there are in the greater Pittsburgh area. That's actually what volunteering is one of the activities in what we call productive aging theory. So that's a theory that says that in retirement, there are 3 different main activities that people will do that will keep them as independent and healthy for as long as they hope. So one is caregiving. So your mother has that. It sounds like she has some, maybe some kids and grandkids that she can do some caregiving for. 2 is paid work, actually either going back to work or staying at work, maybe reducing hours if it's feeling like, if you're feeling like you want to work a little bit less, but also paid work is really significant. And will help your mom preserve her assets for longer and so on. And the 3rd prong is volunteering. And we know that volunteering provides all sorts of benefits for older people. So I hope I answered your question.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Gordon.
Sure.
And William, I just want to say we'd be happy to talk to you about different volunteer opportunities. And also just want to make sure it's clear. So Dr. Gordon does these support groups for NYU retired faculty and current faculty and administrators. But we're hoping that she inspires different workplaces here in the Pittsburgh region just to consider the types of things that they can do, the types of programming that they might do, to think about the different life stages that their own workforce is going through. Because I think there is a lot of focus on maybe the younger employee, but there's just not as much for the older employees, and also thinking about ways to connect generations around different topics. So I want to also, so we only have a few more minutes. I want to make sure, because these were some of the results that we had and a question that we asked about, including age in DEI work that companies are doing, organizations are doing. And I'm just curious to talk to you a little bit about how you see age and ageism tying into DEI work or how it might fall outside of the DEI realm.
Yeah, that's another sort of passion of mine, creating sort of that, adding ageism to the DEI sort of suite of issues that DEI offices will become involved in. So I've been working on that at NYU, and I'm hoping that this What About Age exhibit will really sort of move the needle a bit. So we know, as you said, Laura, there are only 8% of organizations in the US that do include DEI in, ageism in their DEI initiatives. I honestly think that, it's sort of lacks foresight, because we know that there are more and more older workers who would like to stay in the workplace. More and more workers are actually being pushed out because of ageism. And ageism not only, doesn't only affect, older people, it actually affects how we all grow older, right? As you said, it seeps into like beneath our, our skin. It sort of invades our bodies and makes us less healthy. Those studies by Becca Levy were, incredibly significant. If we think about the fact that people primed with negative age stereotypes actually have greater incidence of cardiovascular stress, greater incidence of dementia, slower walking speed, poor recovery from illness, and I can go on and on and on. So including ageism in DEI is super important. We also know that older workers have, things that younger workers don't. They have more patience generally. They're sort of less reactive and less impulsive, and they have what's called crystallized intelligence, which is an ability to look at sort of all of their years and knowledge deposits, and actually make decisions even more quickly than younger people, and have those decisions be based on a much broader set of knowledge and skills. So it makes sense to keep older employees in the workplace because they have a lot to offer.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. We just are so pleased to have the inspiration from NYU, and this might be the start of more conversations. But I'm so glad to have you. And I want to toss it over to our Associate Director, Cassandra Masters, who is going to share just a bit more about some of the work that our workforce work group has been doing and ways that you can plug into that.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Gordon. Really quick, I know we're at 1, but this, a lot of our workforce work was sparked by our workforce work group that Laura mentioned. They have been meeting since 2020, 2021, thinking about age inclusion and in workplaces, and they pulled together a rubric or a self-assessment tool that employers can use to sort of internally look at what their workplace is currently doing, and maybe what they could be improving. And so it's a PDF. We can email it over, you can print it off, share it with HR, you can share it with leadership, you can share it with just your team. And it's really intended to be a starting point to spark what is possible in your workplace. And then if you want more resources or kind of want to know what else Age Friendly is doing to support age diverse workplaces, you can reach out to us. So our emails will be on the next slide, and we can share this self-assessment with folks, and we hope that it's a helpful tool.
Thanks, Cassandra. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Here are our email addresses, as well as our website, agefriendlypgh.org. We're also Age Friendly PGH across social media. So if you use Instagram, please follow us there, Age Friendly PGH. Also LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter /X. And we just really appreciate you all joining us for this first Lunch and Learn. So I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you soon.